Hello everyone. I wanted to make a update video. I tried to film this before and then I got interrupted and never finished the video about having phalloplasty alone. Because I made a video while I was in Montreal in the hotel. I think it was the night or 2 nights before surgery, about how I had to go to Montreal alone and go through this surgery on my own. So I wanted to make an update video because now it's obviously in hindsight, what happened, whereas all of that other stuff was kind of the leading up to surgery and the emotions leading up to it and the travel, whereas I was only speculating how I was going to feel come actually having surgery. So basically I'll pick up right where we left off. The rest of my hotel stay was fine. It was annoying to me that I was alone because I have really bad anxiety with eating at restaurants and just being out in public. And so being in a foreign place where I had to go and eat at restaurants alone was very anxiety inducing to me. So that really sucked. It would have been really nice to have somebody there that I knew that I could just go and we could eat at a restaurant together, because then I wouldn't have to be as awkward and anxious. But I mean, that little tidbit in comparison to what I was going to be going through, I just kept telling myself, this is not a big deal. Eating at this restaurant alone is not a big deal compared to what I'm going to deal with tomorrow in surgery. So, and recovery. So that was annoying. The morning of, I had to get up at like 4 in the morning. I had to be at the hospital for 6, I think. So I got up, checked out of the hotel. They call you a taxi, get in the taxi. I was waiting outside the hospital, and there was a trans woman there who was going in for surgery as well with her mom. So I was chatting with them. So I didn't feel too bad because I was, we were all talking and that was fine. I wasn't feeling lonely or anything at that point. However, she got called in for her pre-op intake stuff before I did. So the two of them left, and I was in the waiting room of the hospital for what felt like forever. It was probably over half an hour or so. If I think it was around 40 minutes, something like that. But I was sitting there alone, and that was when it really hit me that I was there alone, because usually my mom would be with me and we'd just talk at that point and we'd just wait until I was called. But I was sitting there by myself. I had already filled out all the paperwork that I had to, so I had a lot of time to be thinking. And all I could think about, I'm looking out at the street and I'm going like, oh my God, why am I doing this? And I was trying to not to cry. I was starting to get really nervous, and not having anybody to distract me was tough. But as soon as I got called in from that point, like there's no time to think. It was literally like called in, sit down with the nurse to do more intake stuff, go in your room, drop off all your suitcases, change into the gown, get upstairs, walk into the operating room. Like it was so fast that I didn't have any time to think, and I didn't have any time to miss anybody because I was so absorbed in like, this is happening. And then I woke up, it was pretty late in the day, and I was on so many drugs that you don't even know what's happening. Like it just was so, like you just want to sleep. And from that point, I remember asking, I was supposed to tell the intake nurse that they were to call my mom when I got out of surgery, because I was not going to be able to do that, obviously, and there was no one with me to do that. So I was supposed to tell the intake nurse to call my mom. I forgot to do that because I was so absorbed in what was happening that I forgot. And so I remembered around like 6:30 p.m. I was in the hospital bed. I was so drugged up, but I remember saying to the nurse, like, what time is it? And I remember saying like 6:30, and I said, oh, did someone call my mom? And I started to get really nervous because I forgot. And at that moment remembered I was supposed to get the nurses to call. And so they actually brought me a phone that I was able to call, which was nice because I didn't think I'd be lucid enough to actually make a phone call, but I did. And I was able to call my mom, and she got upset with me because I hadn't told, my whole family was pacing around the house really nervous because no one had called yet. And it was now like 12 hours after I was admitted to the hospital. And it's a long surgery. I didn't ask specifically how long my surgery took, but I'm assuming it was around 7.5 hours or so, just because of the amount of time. Like, I know when I went in for surgery, and I know roughly when I was awake. So I'm guessing it took around 7.5 hours or so. But that's just my estimate. But anyway, my parents were waiting around all day trying to wait for word that I was okay. So I talked to them for a while, and then, hung up. And every day after that, pretty much, I was calling home and talking. There was no charge. I checked with them to make sure, because it's long distance, obviously. I wasn't charged for those phone calls or anything. There's a phone in the hospital and in the care home. So I was able to talk to my family every day, and that was fine. It turned out that, honestly and truly, I am really glad that I went by myself, because first of all, I feel a lot more accomplished that I did that, and it feels like a huge milestone in my life that I was able to do that alone, because, like I said, I don't like to leave the house, and I do not like to do things by myself. I like to use other people as a crutch for my anxiety, and I was able to do this alone and travel and go in a hotel and do all of these things by myself, and I'm really proud of myself for it. But also, I was able to recover at my own pace, and that is so important to me, at least. I was able to just sleep and not have to be awake and trying to talk to a family member. I was able to just eat at my own pace. I was able to just heal without worrying about other people's anxiety or other people's emotions about what was going on. I was able to not look at my body the entire time I was in the hospital. I was able to just let the nurses do their thing and not have to hear about from my family, like, oh, that's a lot of blood, or oh, there's pee everywhere, or oh, whatever. Or just like constantly being asked, are you okay? Are you in pain? Are you this? Are you that? Like, I didn't have to worry about any of that, because the nurses know what they're doing. They're calm. They've seen it all before. They're not disturbed. They're not creeped out. They're not, worried. They're just doing their job. So having that calming energy of just like, oh, this is normal, is really reassuring, versus a family member or a friend or a loved one who is there with you seeing all this. It's a lot. Seeing all that going on, smelling that, just being in that space is very upsetting. And I think I don't know any person who would be able to sit in that situation unless they were in the medical field themselves, but a loved one who would be able to watch someone they love go through that and not feel overwhelmed. I don't know that there's a person like that who exists. So I didn't have to deal with all of that energy coming from a loved one, because I was there by myself. I was able to call my family and talk to them and, just tell them how my day was going, but I could hang up the phone and then just take a nap and not have to worry about, what they're doing or what's going on or whatever. The other thing is the financial aspect. I didn't have to pay for a hotel for someone. The other trans folks who were in at the same time as me, some of their family was there. Some of them, like me, were by themselves. They're paying thousands of dollars for their family to stay in the hotel, for the amount of time that they're in the hospital and the care home. I just wasn't going to shell out that money. Honestly, I was not, because I have 3 other stages of surgery to go through, which I do have to have someone there, because those are day surgeries. This is the only surgery I could have alone without having to worry about other people's hotel fees and whatever. The next 3, I'm going to have to shell out some more money, and I didn't want to waste all my money on the first stage of surgery. So that was a big factor as well. But just, so my parents did come. They were supposed to come 2 days before I was leaving. However, because of the ice storm, they were in the car for 12 hours and didn't get to the hotel until late at night. So they missed a day that they were supposed to come visit me. which I just told them, go to the hotel, sleep. You've been in the car for 12 hours. It doesn't matter. It's fine. And then they came. I was being discharged on the Friday morning. They came the Thursday morning to visit, and that was the first time I had seen them since before I left for Montreal. So they came, and my mom was helping me shower because the nurse was showing her kind of what to do, and then you have to lay naked and air dry. So I did that. My parents were both in my room with me, and I warned them. I said, like, it's a lot, and you're just gonna see everything. I'm okay with that. I have no dignity left, but I'm just warning you that it's gonna be a lot. And the shock and the clear discomfort that I was sensing from my parents was a lot. And thankfully at that point, it was the day before I was leaving, I was already in a good place emotionally for myself, that I was able to handle their emotions and their reactions to seeing what happened to me. Because I don't fault them. It took me a long time to come to terms with what had happened and what my body looked like, and the blood and the smell and everything that was going on took that amount of time for me to process. So of course their first time seeing all that is going to be a shock. And thankfully I was in a place at that point that I could handle their emotions, because if that had happened from the beginning, they had been there when I was not okay, it just wouldn't have been good. Whereas by the time they saw my body, I was able to reassure them that I was okay. Because it is distressing. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Your body looks very frightening. The amount of, just like, the arm especially is really scary looking. But the amount of the smell is awful. The leg and the phallus, everything just looks bad and smells bad and is leaking different fluids, and it's terrifying for a loved one to see someone go through that. And the pain that is clearly on your face anytime you have to move or whatever, it was overwhelming to them. And my dad was dead silent. Like, he couldn't even look at me. He was staring at the wall, trying so hard to just keep his composure. My mom was trying to nervously fill the silence and not look at my arm because it was freaking her out, and but trying to be okay with it and trying to make sure that I was okay. And it was a lot of emotion in that tiny room. And I know that if I had to deal with that right from the beginning after surgery, it would have been too much for me, because I was trying to handle my own emotions. I didn't need to have to handle other people's. And so by the time I was having to handle their emotions about it, I was already, a few steps ahead, and I was okay with what was going on by that point. I did also make a video about my initial post-op regret, and my little mini panic attacks. I am so grateful that my family didn't have to see that, because I don't want my family to think that this was a bad idea. They were on board, they're supportive and everything, but there was always, they were always terrified about it because it's a huge surgery, and they always were kind of like, well, don't you think that you could live without it? Do you really need it? And I didn't want them to see. I don't know what I would have said to them had they been there that day when I was telling myself that I made a mistake. And if I had been crying and telling them that I made a mistake, I just don't want to know how they would have reacted. I don't need to make them cry. I don't need to make them feel guilty or whatever. I'm just glad that I was able to process those emotions myself before having to see them. before having to see my parents and see my family and everything. And yeah, because by that point I was able to laugh off a lot of things, and I was a lot more emotionally stable and strong. But I was not that way when I first came out of surgery all the way till a few days into the care home. Um, I just, I think it saved me and then also my family a lot of grief. Just being able to be a part for this and then kind of come back together when things were starting to look better. Um, but I also just saw like other folks in the care home who had family or a partner or whoever with them. I just saw them being like really overly like the family member or the partner being like really overly involved, uh and it was causing me anxiety that they were constantly being like, are you okay? Oh, does that hurt? Do you need me to help you? Do you need this? Do you need that? uh it was causing me anxiety. I was like, just like in my head I'm like, leave them alone, they're fine. If they need help, they're gonna ask you. And it was just, or like constantly going to the nurses and asking questions and things, and I was like, just leave them alone. Like, just go and sit by their bed and talk with them and keep them company. You don't need to be running around micromanaging things. And I know that like it was just annoying me, and I know that if I had had someone there with me, they would have been behaving similarly, and I just didn't need that stress of worrying about other people. I could just worry about myself, and it was fine. The other thing was, um, it forced me to be independent, because when you get to the care home, they want you to be doing things on your own. They want you as much as possible to just do things by yourself. And when I got there, I could not do anything by myself. So it really forced me to, learn how to get out of bed on my own, learn how to get up and go and get something if I needed it, get up and go to the bathroom. If my family was there all day, they would have just gotten my toothbrush for me or reached for the phone for me or, helped me get out of bed or whatever, which, yes, sounds nice. However, I don't think I would have been healed as much as I am now, and I don't think I would have been nearly as independent as I am now. And was once I was actually getting home, if I hadn't been forced to do things myself. Because the nurses will come if you call them, but they're not there 24/7 to be like waiting at your bedside to get everything and do everything for you. They want you to do it alone so that you're prepared when you go home to be able to take care of yourself. And so, that tough love was what I needed to get my body back in gear. If my mom had been there to hand me everything I wanted or get everything for me, I wouldn't have been nearly as mobile as I was. It just wouldn't have gone as smoothly. It was very hard. That was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. It was terrifying. It was excruciatingly painful, and it was emotionally draining, and still is emotionally draining, and stressful. But I was able to do it myself, and I was able to come out of it on the other side now, much more confident in my abilities as a person, and just and my abilities to handle things. And I do understand that I don't like dealing with other people's emotions, and that's just a personality trait that I have. And some people may really, really desperately need somebody to be with them, or they will not be able to function during something this big in their life. But for me, it ended up working out for the better. I am so glad that I went by myself. I'm really glad I was able to heal by myself, because by the time I got home, I didn't need help with a lot of things, because I was used to doing them by myself in the care home. And it just worked out for the better. And as much as it sucks and it sounds awful, that I didn't have anybody with me, I did make that decision myself. If I had begged and pleaded and made it happen and paid for everything, whatever, maybe someone would have come with me. But I just wasn't gonna put up that fight with people. I wasn't gonna force anybody to come help me if they didn't feel comfortable, and I certainly didn't want to pay for it. So, it ended up working out for me. Hopefully, for anybody watching this, if you're going for surgery and you want someone with you, hopefully there's someone in your life who will go with you. but for me, it worked out better that I was by myself and I was able to handle it alone. And I had everybody's support when I got back home. Like my parents drove me home. They came to pick me up to drive me home so I wouldn't have to take the train back. But you know, I had support when I got back here, and that was what was important to me. I had the nurses' support while I was in Montreal, and that was excellent. And I had my family support when I got home, and you know that was the way it went. But I just wanted to talk about that because it did end up working out for the better, and I am glad that it happened that way. And I just wanted to let people know that if you do go alone, that there are some positives to it. If you just kind of dig a little deeper, and you may come out the other side like me, being happy that it happened that way. Anyway, thank you for watching. I will keep you all updated. Any questions about phalloplasty or anything like that, please leave them down below in the comments. I will continue to answer as many questions as I can, because I really want people to have as much information as they can if they're considering this surgery. Anyway, thanks for watching.